Hey guys, which option do you prefer? Playing against a senior chess player or playing against a junior chess player? Well, as for me, I prefer playing against senior chess players. I've defeated already 2 of them in my current tournament, but today I was facing a talented junior called Chingiz Sultai from Kyrgyzstan. He's rated around 1930 FIDE, but he's much stronger because he's a junior. Juniors are always rated lower than their real strength. On chess.com, I've seen his account. He's rated around 2500. So a menacing player. And the tournament organizer told me that he also took some prize in the World School Chess Championship. So he's quite experienced. He also holds the title of Candidate Master. And I'm playing with the white pieces against him. I decided to go for some crazy complications. It was an extremely sharp game, like a massacre over the board. So let's see how it went. So I opened up with 1 e4 and he went for the Sicilian defense. I play this closed Sicilian system that I like. I've played it against Fabiano Caruana in my podcast with him. I've played this against many different players, against Vladimir Kramnik in my podcast with him, by the way. Have you seen my podcasts? Check them out on this YouTube channel. So he goes knight c6, one of the main replies, and here, this is all theory. I give up the bishop, but I spoil his pawn structure, and I put my pawns on light squares because I no longer have a light squared bishop. So he develops, I push this pawn, develop the knight, and here he surprises me by going knight h6. I've never seen this move before. Turns out that this is one of the top engine recommendations. And turns out that Chingiz was actually prepared for my openings because he is a viewer of my channel and he's seen some of my games. So that gave him some insight into what I will play. But still, I castle. Everything normally happening here. He also castles, and here I was in some thought because I didn't know what to do. I really didn't like this knight on h6. I thought it's a suboptimal move. Well, turns out the engine disagrees. It does approve actually of this move because now this knight supports this push of the f-pawn. But at the time I didn't know that. Of course, over the board I thought, my young opponent is showing some lack of understanding. How wrong was I? he was showing not lack of understanding, but I was showing lack of knowledge of engine lines. So here I thought for some time the standard plan here is to go queen e1 and then prepare f5 and put the queen on h4 and attack. This is a standard plan, and I was initially going to do that, but then I thought maybe I can exploit this knight on h6, maybe I can go h3, preventing also the bishop from going to g4 and preventing the knight from ever going to g4. And I also want to put my pawn on g4 if I'm allowed to do that to restrict the knight even further. Obviously, I thought that he can go f5, but I thought this is again a weakening because this diagonal gets weak. And I've won already a beautiful game in this tournament against a FIDE master, the rating favorite, who also put his knight on h6 and also advanced his pawn to f6, but not to f5. So I was quite optimistic about this f5 move. He went f5 and I thought, well, he's weakened his position even more. I should be better. Turns out the computer thinks it's absolutely equal and I'm stupid, but whatever. So here I decided to develop my bishop to e3. I also thought for some time to maybe go e5, killing this bishop of his. But the problem is that there are some tactics for him. He can go knight f7. This is what I calculated. And if I protect the pawn like queen e2, for example, he can take, I take back, he takes with a knight, and he doesn't lose a piece because he has this queen d4 check, forking my king and my knight. And if I block, he takes with the queen and he's up a pawn. Turns out the computer is not impressed and says that it's equal because black has those stupid double pawns and this isolated pawn. So white has some compensation for the sacrificed pawn, but why should I sack this pawn? And I also don't know that the computer approves of this, so obviously I didn't want to do that. So I thought, you know what, I won't go e5 now, but I'll prepare it. I'll go bishop e3 first, and then maybe later on I'll go e5. Also, if he takes later on, this pawn will get vulnerable. Here he goes rook b8, activating the rook, pressuring my b2 pawn, and the computer here says that I should already play in a very cautious manner and go rook b1, and the position is absolutely equal. But I didn't want to put my rook on b1. Look at my rook, it's so passive, it's looking, it's staring into its own pawn. This rook is very active, so the quality of rooks is very incomparable, I would say. So I thought I won't be better here, probably black would be better here, I thought. So I decided to do something crazy in the style of romantic chess. This is what I like doing. I decided to sacrifice a pawn and go e5. So the idea is, if he takes, which he didn't, by the way, he was surprised by my move and thought for some time. So I was thinking, actually the computer thinks it's completely rubbish, so I'm just showing what I wanted to do. I wanted to go d4, and the idea is twofold. First of all, I'm protecting this pawn and killing this bishop of his, restricting its movement. Second of all, I've calculated some variations where in future I might even push d5, and if he takes, take with the knight galloping, or maybe take with the queen, checking the king and using this weak diagonal. Also, I've calculated that a natural move here would be bishop a6, attacking my rook on f1, and here I thought that I'm very clever because I won't move the rook, but rather I would attack his rook. He cannot go queen b6 on pain of f4, so that would be losing for black. So he has to retreat with the rook, for example, to b8, and then I can move my rook to d1 and create this pressure over this file. Already I'm threatening, for example, to take this pawn, and he cannot take back because his queen would be hanging. And I thought I have great compensation for the sacrificed pawn. Actually, the computer is not impressed. It says that the evaluation is minus 0.6. But still, I thought it's a nice position to have, and I was feeling adventurous. That's what I wanted to do, d4, if he takes the pawn. But he didn't take the pawn. He also was impressed with my idea, probably, and he went knight f7, trying to put more pressure on my e5 pawn. Still, I insist and go d4. I go d4, and it's a mistake. According to the computer here, I should have traded, the computer says, and I should have protected my pawn. But this is so ugly. This is so, like, not in the spirit of what I want to do when I play chess. I want to play aggressively. I want to play creatively. I don't want to put my rook on b1. So this is not a happy decision. So also I don't want to take on d6 because that opens up his bishop. Now look at this position. His bishop is so beautiful, so gorgeous. It's pressuring my whole position. And this e5 pawn is an important part of the mechanism in my position, restricting the bishop. So I tried to strengthen it by going d4. But here my opponent started playing like a genius. Well, I wanted to say like a computer, but I'm not insinuating anything. I'm sure he played on his own. It's just that he's very strong, a very strong junior player who calculates very well. So he takes, which at first I thought is not good because I take with my knight, I gallop in, and now this is hanging. But he just protects. I was surprised by this move. From afar, I thought probably he'll take here, but then I take here, and I calculated this variation queen takes d1, because here his queen and his rook are hanging, so he has to trade the queens. So queen takes d1, and here I calculate knight takes e7 check, so I don't take his queen, but I first check him. And once he drops back, I can take with my knight, protecting the b2 square, the b2 pawn. And actually, I'm up a pawn in this position, and I'm then definitely not worse. Everything is hanging, by the way. This is hanging, this is hanging, this is hanging, this will be hanging later on, but I thought I'm not worse in this position, definitely. And the computer says that I'm actually a little bit worse, minus 0.1, but it's close to equality. So I was correct. And I calculated this variation, and I was very happy that, okay, knight takes d4 is a good move. If he takes, okay, whatever. But he didn't take. he almost immediately went queen c7. He plays very fast. He's a great blitz player, as you have probably heard me saying. 2500 blitz rating on chess.com is impressive. I'm just 2250 around this mark currently. So he's a much better blitz player than me. So here again, I should have taken the pawn, the computer says. But I didn't want to do that because, again, this opens up the scope for the bishop, and he can take back with the pawn. He also can take back with the knight, I thought. Activating this knight, later on jumping here or here, and maybe breaking with e5 and then f4. I really didn't like that. So I thought I will not take. I will continue putting pressure. This is my dog. Charlie, say hi. This is a Westie, my second, as I call him. So I go queen f3, pressuring the c6 pawn. And here I again spent much time calculating stuff. And I calculated various responses. First of all, I calculated that if he takes my pawn on e5, I'm taking on c6 with my queen. And if he takes, I take with the knight. Now his rook is hanging, and this pawn is hanging. So he has to take my pawn on b2, but then I check him. He drops back, and then I take another pawn of his. This is what I calculated. One variation. So material is equal here. The computer gives some advantage to black, but nothing too crazy. So black can take, for example, on e4, and then I can go knight c to d5. I think that's what I was intending. The computer says, yeah, it's okay. It's a nice move. So yeah, he can take another pawn, but I'll just go rook here, and he cannot take this pawn because the bishop will be hanging. So it's an interesting position. Yes, he has one extra pawn, but it's doubled, and it will soon probably fall, and I have the outside pass pawn. So interesting complications. So this is one of the options. And I thought probably this is the most logical move for him. I thought he'll do that. Also, what can he do here? I'm attacking this pawn 2 times. It's defending just 1 time. So if he defends it like this hangs a fork. Knight e6 forks the queen and the rook, so it's bad. If he defends it like this, then this hangs a fork with a pawn, also not good. So what else can he do? If he goes c5, I go knight d5, and my knight joins the action. And this is very good for me. I'm already better, much better. If he goes d5, this just doesn't look right, because now his bishop is permanently blocked, and he cannot undermine this pawn chain of mine. Pawns don't go backwards, so these pawns could have undermined my pawn chain, but now they can't, and I'm better. So I've calculated all this stuff, and I also calculated rook takes b2. Yes, this is also another logical move in this position. Rook takes b2. So here I thought I also can take. He takes, I take with a knight. He takes on c2, and I check him. He drops back, and here I think I've finished my calculation here. So I felt that I'm okay. And the computer agrees. Actually, yeah, it's completely equal after rook f to c1, according to the computer, because we trade, black takes here, but I can take on a7, for example, and yeah, it's equal. So I've calculated all those lines. I've spent like 15 minutes on this move, queen f3, attacking the c6 square. And I completely forgot that he can just move his knight backwards. Knight d8. This is the only move I wasn't even considering, protecting this c6 pawn. I thought it's like anti-positional, undeveloping your knight, putting it on the 8th rank. Turns out it's fine, and it gives black some advantage. So my opponent actually played this quite fast, so I was very impressed. So it turns out now I have to trade on d6, because otherwise this pawn is attacked 1, 2, 3 times, and it has just 1 defender, so I cannot retain it. So I have to take. He takes back. And now I realize that I'm worse because this bishop is a monster. There's no longer any pawn restricting it. This bishop will join the action probably over this diagonal or maybe over that diagonal. He has the two bishops advantage on an open board. He also has more pawns in the center. These pawns will march, advance later on. And this bishop of mine is stupid. It doesn't do anything else. This rook is powerful, attacking my b2 pawn. So I wasn't a fan of my position here. And I thought I should do something creative. I should not be passive. So first instinct was going knight b3, blocking this rook, and at least I'm not losing the b2 pawn, but I didn't like this position. My knight is too passive. He can go knight e6, for example. And the computer agrees. Black is pleasantly better. So I wanted to retain this knight on a central square. That's why I didn't drop back. Also, the computer suggests rook a to b1, but again, this is not a happy move. I didn't want to do that. So I came up with a creative idea. Queen e2, dropping back to go forward. Sometimes you have to take a step back to go forward to all this stuff from the internet quotes. So the idea is quite sensible because, for example, if he does nothing, like, I don't know, h6, I can go queen c4 check. And once he draws back, for example, I can even go something like knight d5. It doesn't work due to queen f7, but maybe later I can go there. Maybe I can go knight b5. It doesn't work. Okay, nothing works. I calculated incorrectly, but still, this is a nice position because I control this diagonal. At least I create some threats. At least my queen is pressuring this pawn jointly with my knight, so he cannot move this knight of his or this queen of his because he doesn't want to lose that pawn. So this is some good change for me. I activate my queen. I create some threats, but he plays very precisely. He goes knight e6, activating his knight. And once I pin him here, which is also a mistake, the computer says I should have just traded and again protected this pawn, but I don't like this. I wouldn't want to go for this position. Also, look at those bishops. The two bishops combo. They are so menacing. I would be tortured in this position for a long time. So I did not take. I decided to pin him, but he just went d5. I draw back, and now he takes a pawn. Finally, after like 10 moves, this pawn was hanging all the time. He didn't want to take it because he didn't want to give me an attack, but now I don't have any attack, so he can comfortably take this pawn. And I'm much worse. And he's playing clinically, and he's playing very fast. He had, at this point, he had like 50 minutes on his clock, whereas I had like 15. Because I spent much time on every move because I calculated all those crazy variations. Most of them did not occur on the board, so this was frustrating. Sometimes the game just doesn't go your way. So here I thought for some time and I decided, what, I need to fight for this open file at least. Okay, I'll go rook b1. Here he takes. And I considered briefly taking with a knight, but I really didn't like it. For example, he can go c5 here. It's important that if I take with a rook, he cannot go c5 because this pawn will be hanging. So my knight on c3 is doing some active job of controlling this square. So at least it's much better than on b1. So he can go c5, for example. I can trade, and this position is like miserable for white. Minus 1.59. So practically winning. The computer would win this easily. Human also. I think I would have lost it. So there is not much counterplay for me here. So I decided against taking with my knight. I took with the rook. And I realized here that he can actually win a pawn of mine by going knight to f4. But I thought that I will win back the pawn by going queen takes c6. And I calculated the following variation. Queen takes, knight takes, and desperado, knight takes h3. So he can take this knight, but then I'll take the black knight. So he's sacrificing it for a pawn first and then taking my knight. And then I can, for example, take this pawn on a7 and I'm down a pawn, but at least I have some counterplay and I'm down just one pawn, not two. So this is what I calculated. Had he gone knight takes h4 here, I would have gone queen c6. Turns out I miscalculated. He could have gone knight f4, and actually this is the top engine choice. And after queen takes c6, he's not obliged to take my queen. He can first take the pawn. I didn't see that. The problem is that if I take back with a pawn, he has this annoying check, queen g3, and I'm losing. Because if I move my king, doesn't matter where, he'll take my bishop and my position is collapsing. So I didn't see that. So here, the only move that doesn't lose on the spot is king h1, but then he takes, and he's winning. Because, well, if I take his knight, he's up 2 pawns, and the position is collapsing for me. Bishop d7, for example. 2 bishops, my king is weak, all my pawns are weak. This is just losing. So he didn't see that, neither did I. He didn't take the pawn on f4. Instead, he took the knight, which is also a good move, also gives him pretty decent advantage. Takes, and here, if he takes on d4, I take with the queen, and actually I'm quite happy. Yes, I'm down a pawn, but I'm able later on to block these pawns with my knight, putting it on this outpost on c5, great square. And his bishop is not too impressive because it's eyeing its own pawns, so it doesn't have too much scope. So I will rotate my knight to c5 and enjoy some compensation for the pawn. The computer gives some chances to black, -0 to white, -0.8. Still, it's better for black, but I can fight. But of course, he doesn't take on d4. That would ease my pain. He takes on f4, and that's not something that I liked. From afar, I thought that I can take on a7 here, and not here. Knight e2 first, attacking his queen and defending d4. And if queen e4, I thought I can take on the a7, attacking on g7. And if he takes, I'll take with my knight. And actually, I'm almost equal because yes, I'm down a pawn, but this knight is very active and this queen is very active. So the rook will probably join the action. So it's a good position. So this is what I thought from afar, that if he takes on f4, I'll go knight e2. And if he takes here, I take with my queen. Yes, this is what I calculated. And if he goes c5, I can put more pressure like knight b3. And if you go c4, for example, then I can go knight d4. And I'm down 2 pawns, but I'm blockading the pawns for the time being. Then I'll go rook b5, and I have some compensation. So I stopped my calculation somewhere around here. I thought that I have some chances to hold this endgame. But I forgot about one thing. After queen takes f4, knight e2, queen e4, if I take on a7, he has this great move, rook f7, and I just didn't see it. For some reason, from afar, I missed it. And I'm completely losing. I have to give up a piece. Because if I move my queen off this diagonal, then this gets taken. For example, queen b8, bishop d4 check. Knight takes, queen takes, and he's up a bishop. He'll go rook f8 next, and I don't have anything. So here, instead of going knight e2, I should have gone either bishop c5, forcing the queen trade, but it's also a miserable endgame for me. 2 bishops, and look at those bishops. Look at those bishops once they get activated. I don't stand a chance. So yeah, but that would have been better. Or a bishop takes g7, but I honestly didn't see bishop c5. I only saw bishop g7. Here already was down on time, so I didn't have too much time to calculate everything. But I saw this, and I decided that this is completely losing. I don't have any chances in this position. I'm down 2 pawns. So I decided, you know what? Okay, I'll sacrifice a piece here. I went knight e2, took on a7, and after rook f7, I went queen c5. Yes, I give him the e2 knight, and he gladly takes it. And here, unfortunately, my dream move here would be rook b8, pinning him. But unfortunately, he has this queen e1 check here, and my only move is king h2, and then bishop e5. Bishop takes, queen takes, and it's a fork, and I lose the rook. So this is what I calculated here. Unfortunately, I cannot go rook b8, so I have to trade the bishops first, and then I want to infiltrate. First, I thought I'll go queen takes c6, but he just goes queen e6 and I have nothing. So I decided, you know what, I'll try to infiltrate in a clever way. Queen d6, I'm threatening queen d8. Check, he goes queen e8 back, I take the pawn. He goes, now I threaten to take both the bishop and the pawn, so he goes queen d7, and I go queen c5. And here, I had some cunning idea here. If he goes bishop b7, I can take. And actually, if he takes, this is mate, checkmate. He didn't fall for that, but that was a clever trap that I set. So bishop b7, rook takes b7, and he cannot take. He can only give me a perpetual check. So that would be a funny way to end this game. But he didn't fall for that. He went queen d7. I draw back. He goes bishop b7, and still I have some chance, some hope, because his king is weak. I go rook b6, my rook is very active. He goes h5, trying to give some luft to the king, and I push the pawn to a4. So I'm still creating some chances, some threats, so if he takes the pawn, for example, I'll take his bishop. And if he takes, I go queen c8 check, and I win this rook with check, and it's a draw. Another trap that he didn't fall for. So queen takes a4 would be a mistake. He doesn't do that. He goes queen e7, offers a queen trade. Of course, if I accept the queen trade, I lose in this endgame because he has an extra bishop. So I don't agree to that. I go queen b5, trying desperately to maybe push this pawn and create some chances, but he's very precise. He goes h4 here. You will see now the idea of this move. I go a5 and he goes d4. And the idea is that once I go a6, he has this check. And if I go, for example, to h1, then it's a forced checkmate. Queen here, check. King here, queen here, check. King here, and this is a checkmate due to this battery. So after queen e3 check, I cannot go to h1, I cannot go to h2. Both of those moves lead to forced mate. I have to go to f1. And here, for some reason, he didn't go for queen c1 check, which is the fastest way to win. The only move is king f2, then check, take, 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 and this is an easy win. For some reason, he didn't go for that. Here he went rook e7. He thought he has a forced mate here because he's threatening this. And if I take, for example, with check, he has king h7. And my checks are no longer here, and he will checkmate me very soon. But thankfully, I have this last resource, queen b3 check, and I force a queen trade, and I'm not mated at least. And also, this pawn might help its friend here, but still it's of course losing. He drops back with the bishop. I take one pawn, I go here, he goes d3, I push the pawn, desperately trying to create some chances, but he is very clinical. Rook d7, if I take, he is in time to stop the pawns like this, and the king just will take the pawns. So I did not take the rook. I went rook h6, d2, check, check, exchanging the rooks, king e2. At least I'm trying to take his pawns. Maybe somehow I will win his pawns and he'll be left just with one bishop, but this is not meant to be. He takes a pawn. If I take here, he goes king c7 and again takes my pawns. So I try to go b6, but he finds a beautiful finishing touch, bishop f1. And here I resign because if I take the bishop, then he queens. If I take the pawn, then he takes all my pawns, and he doesn't give me his pawns. So this is absolutely losing. My opponent played at 91.4% accuracy this game. Very impressive. considering the fact that it was very tactical, sharp, and lots of variations, and he calculated them instantly. Wow, I'm so impressed, and I really don't like playing younger prodigies. I like playing senior players more. But who am I? Who am I to be grumpy? I've enjoyed this game. This was a good lesson for me. After this round, I'm on 3 out of 5 points. I'm still in contention for the prizes if I play the remaining 4 rounds in a decent way. So wish me luck and see you in the next one. Bye-bye.